Well, hello there. Welcome back to No Recipe Required. Hope you're doing well tonight. What I'm going to show you tonight is a little steak fajitas. It's a dish I make fairly often, maybe once every couple months at least. It's really pretty simple to make. I use flank steak, which is the traditional cut. We'll fry up some peppers, some onions, and we'll put it all together. Let's go ahead and get started with marinating the steak. All right, let's go ahead and start making our marinade for our steak fajitas. What I've got here in the bowl, this is the bowl I'm going to marinate in. I've got the juice of, say, 1.5 limes. This is probably 3 tablespoons of juice in there. You need a little bit of acid to break down the fibers of the meat. And I'm going to add to that probably almost a tablespoon of cumin. I think that's probably the most important spice in the marinade here. I'm also going to add a number of others. Here I've got some garlic powder. Here I've got some onion powder. And really, it doesn't matter too much, the ratios. I put in about equal amounts. If anything, maybe a little bit more cumin than anything else. This was just some chili powder. And then I've got some paprika as well. And we'll put that in there. And then I also like just a bit of cinnamon, just a quick dash. That's the one that I go pretty light on because it's got such a strong flavor on it. I'm going to add a little bit of oregano. And then I like to add a little bit of sugar to my marinades. This is probably, again, maybe almost a tablespoon of sugar in there. And then some oil. A few tablespoons of oil. You're really just looking for enough liquid to form a paste so that our meat gets nicely coated with all these spices. I'm going to let the meat sit in here for a couple hours in the fridge. Then we'll take it out right before we cook. We'll bring it up to room temperature. We'll do a seasoning of salt and pepper, and then cook it off. For our fajitas, I like to start with the onions and peppers. Saute those off first, because frankly they take longer to cook than the meat. Add just a touch more oil to my pan. And they also they sit well. Unlike the meat, you want to cook it, you want to let it rest, and then serve it up. These, you can cook an hour, 2 hours ahead of time without any problem at all, and just kind of let them sit and then reheat them when you're ready to use them. I'm going to go ahead and add just salt and pepper, and saute these up very simply on high heat. I like to leave just a little bit of crunch to them. So, the total cooking time will probably be about 10 minutes or so. You're looking for, like I said, a little bit of softness, but some maintenance of that crunch. I've let my peppers and onions go for probably 5 or 6 minutes, and I'm going to flip them around. They've been on high heat, and after that initial toss, I haven't really done much to them. I haven't done much because I want them to sear. I want them to get kind of these nice, well, they kind of look a little burned, but they're not burned. They're absolutely perfect. At this point, because I'm doing these a little bit ahead of time, probably half an hour or so ahead of time, I'm going to turn them off. They're just maybe slightly more firm than what I want at the end. But since I'm going to reheat them, they're going to cook a little bit more. So once I get that nice sear, I'm just going to turn the heat off. We'll set this to the back of the stove, and we can start up on our meat. You can marinate your steak for hours and hours. Even if you did it overnight, that'd be totally fine. This one's been going for a few hours. Frankly, if you only have an hour, I still would marinate it. Go ahead. It'll certainly get some of that flavor on there. Now remember, we didn't put any salt or pepper in the marinade, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm also going to spread a little bit more oil so it doesn't stick into the pan on the top. And you want to get both sides seasoned. So let's flip it on over, and we'll do this side. Then we'll come back and we'll cook it up. I'm going to do mine on the stove. We'll talk about that as we do it. Okay, let's go ahead and cook our meat for our fajitas. Now, I love to grill fajitas or fajita meat, flank steak like this. I think it's awesome. Unfortunately, it's pitch black outside, so I'm not going to grill it. Instead, I'm going to use I'm going to cook it inside, obviously, and I'm going to use a grill pan here. I just laid a little bit of oil on it, and I'm using a paper towel to just kind of spread it out because it's got these ridges in it. Now, if you don't have a grill pan, obviously go ahead and use the grill. But if you don't have if you're still going to cook it inside, use this exact same technique and methodology. You just use a regular old frying pan, no problem at all. The thicker the better, because you want something that really can retain the heat. I've got my steak here, or my flank steak, again seasoned and oiled. I'm going to lay it down. My pan is nice and hot. It's going to give it a nice big sizzle. This is really the key, or one of the keys, to get a nice good sear on the steak. That's going to make it taste a whole lot better. Going to make sure it's spread out, and then once I lay it down like that, I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to let that sear do its thing, get nice and crusty on that one side, and then we'll come back. We're going to flip it. We'll flip it once, and then we'll let it rest. We'll be done. Okay, we've been going for 7 or 8 minutes on this side, and we're going to go ahead and flip it over. You can see here I've got the nice grill marks. The edges are crispy, and that's exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to go ahead. This is a fairly thick cut, so I'm probably going to let it go ahead for another 5 or 6 minutes on this side before it's done. Now, done this flank steak, I think it can go a little bit more done than, say, a filet mignon or New York strip or something like that. So I'm going to let this go a little bit longer than I might. I'll also turn the heat down just a touch. My steak's been cooking on the other side now for 7-8 minutes. Again, I'm going to go with the feel test. I can feel it's nice and firm. This is where I want it. So I'm going to turn the heat off, and you can't cut into this meat right now. If you do, it's going to be a mess. The meat, you know, it's like your fist. It's all balled up in there like that. You want to make sure that it rests and relaxes. The temperature lowers a little bit, and the juices kind of absorb back into the cells of the meat. If you cut it right now, everything just kind of runs out. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this off the heat. I'm going to wrap it up in aluminum foil, and then set it aside. While we're doing that, oops, you remember we've got our peppers and onions that we cooked off earlier. I'm going to put these on high heat and get these nice and hot so that they're ready to go when we cut the meat. I've got my meat rested. I'm going to unwrap it from the foil. It should it should stay pretty warm in there. And again, this gives the juices a little bit of time to reabsorb into the meat. I'm going to go ahead and pull this off of the foil. And this, actually, that juice in there, if you want to hold it and makes, frankly, just throw it right back on your fajita. I think it's a pretty good call. Now, if you remember from looking at the meat before, there was a grain to the meat, and the grain was running this way. All the fibers kind of ran this way. So we want to cut against the grain. So obviously just line your meat up and go right straight down the meat in nice thin strips is what we're looking for. Maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch apart. And this is going to be our fajita meat. Alright, I've got my fajita meat cut up there. I've got my peppers and onions that I just reheated. You can lay those right around the meat. This is a nice little presentation technique. And then obviously you've got your tortillas. You can heat those up on a little hot plate, and then serve these up with your favorite toppings: cheese, guacamole, sour cream, anything you want. I'll see you next time on No Recipe Required.